First leg of the TELUS Canadian Championship semifinal goes on OneSoccer August 13th. And we have a very intriguing matchup, gentlemen, because we have the Vancouver Whitecaps who are looking for the 4P, and they are having a great MLS season. In the Supporter Shield race, they're sitting on 45 points. Philadelphia Union leading that right now with 51 points. They brought in Thomas Mueller. He's going to land the day of the game, so will most likely be available for leg 2. And they're taking on a CPL side in Forge FC who dispatched an MLS side already in CF Montreal. Oh, and by the way, are unbeaten in 18. They have not lost in 2025. So let's start with the CPL team here, AGR. What does Forge need to do to win this tie?
What they need to do across 180 minutes with this Whitecaps team, I think it starts with a great leg 1 at home. They have a fantastic record at Tim Hortons Field this year. Over the last 2 years, they obviously beat CF Montreal this year, drew them last year. I think leg 1 is going to be massive. Forge's success for me this year has all been due to what they're doing at the back. Like, they are a completely different team defensively, bringing in Dan Nimick, what Achinoti Janssen's doing, Melika Olabi-Bellewu when he's been fit and in the lineup. The fullbacks they've brought in, they've got an excellent thing going defensively. They're going to need that. This Whitecaps team likes to hold the ball. This Whitecaps team likes to attack. Forge has shown, though, in the CPL that they've gone to teams like Ottawa who like to play a similar style, and they can shut up shop, put those 4, another 5 in front, and then a 1, and just lock it up. They're going to need to be very strong defensively. And what's good with Forge is they've got weapons that can hurt the Whitecaps in transition. You've got a David Chouanier who can run. You've got a Nana Mpomo who's having a fantastic season. Brian Wright scored a great goal against Montreal. Of course, Kyle Becker in midfield. Some of the Tristan Borges is hitting form just as August turns around. They've got the weapons to potentially get goals, but it's not going to be matter if you're leaking 2, 3, 4 against the Whitecaps like it could if you don't take care of them defensively. So that's going to be the big one. And of course, it all starts with leg 1, because I think in leg 2, there's a lot going on in September. There's some big games for the Whitecaps. They're going to want to go for the Supporter Shield. If you can get them now, you're going to want to have to make them choose in September and not be able to throw out a B team and comfortably cruise at BC Place.
The mission is very simple for the first leg for Forge. Win the game. They have to win this first leg at home. To me, it's non-negotiable. Forge has the ability to score against MLS teams at Hamilton Stadium. They've done it to CF Montreal the last 2 years. They did it against Toronto FC as well. Forge is a different type of animal playing at Hamilton Stadium. It's a place where they rarely lose, let alone drop points. They'll be buoyed by a big crowd as well. There's a lot of anticipation as they test themselves against probably the best MLS team that they played in recent years. It's a really good test, but I'm confident that Forge isn't just going to sit back and defend. They're going to go out there and try to score goals. Notably, they rested Kyle Becker, Mo Babuli, and Brian Wright on the weekend as well, with eyes for this game. Meanwhile, the Whitecaps, after playing Saturday night, traveling from San Jose, cross country, with a lot of other things going on. So I think the context is good for Forge. And with no Ranko Veselinovic, I think he's a huge loss for the Whitecaps, by the way. Short-term, long-term. No ready-made solution has come in there. They haven't brought in their depth left back. Cabrera's doesn't sound like he's going to play yet. And Thomas Muller's not playing yet as well. So it's a Whitecaps team that might be well rested, but are still short in terms of what their best side would have been. Remember, Vite left, and he was one of the most important players over the course of the first half of the season. So I think the Whitecaps are catching him at a good time. On the flip side, they need to deal with Brian White, because Brian White is the team's best player. He's the biggest threat. And I think that there's a bigger difference between him playing Forge's back line than any other positional battle on the field. Melika Olabi-Bellewu doesn't sound great when it comes to his availability. He's dealing with a little bit of a quad. I mean, the combination of Nimick and Achinoti Janssen, they're going to have their hands full, because Olabi-Bellewu brings a different type of profile in terms of a center back. How good he is man-to-man marking or just physically defending a player. Achinoti Janssen and Nimick, good ball distributors, very smart, very intelligent about the way they play, but they're not all that physical. So I think that's a complete advantage for the Whitecaps is the White versus the center back pairing on Forge. So we'll see what he can do. If Forge can take care of Brian White in this game, then they really got to have a puncher's chance at the very least to come away with a result, which should be a win in the first leg if they have any hopes of going on to advancing to the Voyageurs Cup final.
Seems pretty obvious. Leg one is where Forge really need to make their mark in this tie. Bobby, if we know it, Bobby Smirniotis knows it. But if you're Jesper Sorensen, AGR, is he seeing it the same way? Like when he looks at leg one, do you think this is a rotating lineup or do you think he's playing his strongest lineup?
I expect a strong team because they're coming off a bit of a bye. Also, they have some injuries, which it doesn't help. Like, don't forget Ali Ahmed. He's slated to come back in about a week and a half. Of course, Ryan Gauld, they're hoping comes back at some point. That's a whole other story. You look at where they're at. They have Houston all the way on Sunday. They got an extra day of rest at home, the Thomas Muller debut. I think they can look at that and they're going to go all out for this because in September's a busy month. They've got a bunch of huge Western Conference games. They play Seattle and Portland in back-to-back weeks at some point. They play the Philadelphia Union at home in a game that could very well decide their supporter shield hopes in a huge game. Whereas right now in August, the schedule's a bit softer. They're in a mix of a run of they're playing a bunch of teams in and out of around that Western Conference playoff picture, like 7th and below. I expect a strong team, and they also respect Forge. We saw it against Valor. They put out a stronger team than we thought they would. They want to win this tournament. First off, there's the bragging rights of winning 4 in a row. Only Toronto FC have done it in the modern era, and there's the fact that it's the easiest route back to the Champions Cup. Of course, with how that tournament has changed, they could finish top 3 in the West, and I still think they'll get it, but they know that winning this tournament guarantees that while getting you a trophy. Sorensen's going to go all out, and the schedule also will allow him to do that in leg one, knowing that leg two, things are going to be very busy and distracted around that.
It just needs to be said, they're not as much of a machine as they were a few months ago. That CONCACAF Champions Cup run, like the rotation between league play and cup play, worked out really well for Sorensen. I don't even think it's the Whitecaps' own doing. Yes, they lost some crucial players through injury. I'm not even talking about Ryan Gauld. I'm talking about like Ali Ahmed, who's back on the pitch training. That's a good sign. Veselinovic, Atakubi. Like, they've lost some key players over that stretch, but more so is the international disruptions. Like, June was a disaster with like the international windows and the Gold Cup, and it was just a mess. And it just seems like they've been thrown out of their rhythm. So I think that maybe when the fixtures come about and start loading up a little bit, it might suit this team better, especially with reinforcements in hand. I feel like Sorensen, even though they were playing like midweek weekend, like they were rolling and there was some rhythm to their game. Now it's like good performance, poor performance, okay performance. Like it's been a bit of a yo-yo here over the last little bit, but I really don't think it's of the Whitecaps' own doing.
Well, and speaking of that, we know that they're coming off, fans not happy with the way the game was reffed on the weekend against San Jose. They lost that one 2-1. And as much as there's so much excitement around Thomas Muller arriving, rightfully so, on Wednesday, sometimes that also means the circus is coming to town and you can be a little bit more distracted by that storyline that's going to be off the pitch for now before he actually starts playing games. And even then, he's just the focus. So there's a lot going on. Any concern about the headspace heading into their match versus Forge then, Wheels, knowing that he literally, Thomas Muller does, land on the day of the game?
Yeah, it's an awkward one. It's a weird one because they play a huge game on Wednesday night. Then Muller's introduced on Thursday, and then then kind of the big show begins. And coming off the weekend where those were considerable drop points by the Whitecaps, and a lot of energy, a lot of oxygen is being taken up by berating a match official across Major League Soccer. When you're repeating the name of an MLS official, you know that there's an issue. And by the way, I support the Whitecaps and their fans in feeling completely aggrieved by the way that the situation played out on the weekend. The sending off by Ocampo, never a second yellow. And the penalty that was given was an incredibly poor decision by the official as well. And the fact there's history between this referee and the Vancouver Whitecaps, MLS should do the right thing. Look, there's nothing you can do to make up what happened, but that referee should not be presiding over Whitecaps games for the foreseeable future. It's not a great look, and things need to cool off. Whitecaps aren't the only team that has been that feels aggrieved by officiating decisions going against them. But in this case, this one stings a little bit more. So there's a ton going on. Collectively, though, I trust Sorensen to have this team focused, but maybe all the outside noise might be kind of taking away from the magnitude of how big the game is on Wednesday night. You're not only in the semifinal of the Canadian Championship, you're taking on a Forge team that is unbeaten in league and Canadian Championship play in 21. That isn't a fluke. That is very difficult to do, and underestimate your opponent at your own peril, because Forge, this is, look, they want to win every competition they're in, Andy, but I got the feeling that this is the one that is circled by Bobby Smirniotis and the people at Forge. They want to go out and win the Canadian Championship first and foremost. So Wednesday night is going to be huge, and they have to deal with all the other headlines and stories that are revolving around the Whitecaps right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's going to be for the Whitecaps. The noise. I think you're absolutely right, though, about Jesper Sorensen. I think he's the difference maker in that regard, just that he's such a calm, level-headed, no-nonsense coach. You saw it. Like, this was someone who was dropped in, like, all right, welcome to your new job. Week 1, you're heading to Costa Rica. Week 3, you're heading to Monterrey. Week 6, you're heading to Mexico City. And he's just like, all right, like, okay. And he would laugh along the way as he discovered CONCACAF refereeing, away days in Mexico, and he took it all on the chin. And I think he's going to have to do it here. For him, he's excited to have Thomas Muller around. He's a big reason Thomas Muller is coming. It sounds like his pitch to Muller convinced the German legend. Ever since Sorensen's come in, he's just operated with an extreme amount of professionalism, but just this calming presence. But that's good, because this tie, like, dare I say, this might be the best MLS versus CPL tie we've seen in this competition. Just in terms of Forge, they're the best version of a CPL team we've seen, just in terms of their experience and the levels they're hitting to hit this competition, especially given that they've reached this stage before with Atletico Ottawa. You can argue they've been just as good at Forge this year, but they're new to this, being at the business end of a CAN champ. Forge, it's 4 of the last 5 they've been in the semifinal. And then you've got the Whitecaps that have won 3 in a row. They've taken care of business, but it hasn't always been easy against CPL teams. There's a bit of history there. I just love that this is set up to be 2 heavyweights of their respective leagues. I think this could be a real, test for the Whitecaps and a real chance for Forge to show what they're all about as a football club.
2 of the best teams right now in Canada. You kind of wish it was the final, but here's the thing. The fact that they're facing each other in the semifinal means it's 2 legs. So it's so nice we get to see them twice.